Freedom, not globalism, will be our credo.
What is it you're waiting for? Do you even know anymore?
These are people who work hard, but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. We got a great stream for you guys tonight. We are going to be talking a lot about the upcoming 2024 election, as well as the trial that is nothing short of interference in the 2024 election. So without further ado, we can put up, and there we go. I am alive. I'm here. It's been, I think, since Tuesday since we last did a stream, but we are ready to go. We're going to be taking super chats the entire stream. If you guys want to send in any questions for me, feel free to do so. And if you guys want to double up your super chat, if you can afford to, you want to send 10 to me, then I encourage you to send another $10 to Trump, because even though he's fundraising a lot better, he's getting a lot more money, well, he could always use a little bit extra. It's going to come down to every single dollar to win this election. That is the most important thing that I'm focusing on. That's the most important thing that everybody should be focusing on right here, right now. We have a country at stake in this election. This is not an ordinary election. That's always what people say, but it is for real this time, because you have an economy in shambles. You have foreign affairs in shambles. We're on the brink of World War III now. China taking Taiwan, that could happen by the election. Who knows what's going to happen after that? On top of that, you have the border crisis, which is huge. You have 10 million people plus invading this country under the Biden administration because of direct action that Joe Biden has taken. He started it. He has shown no signs of finishing it. And even if he tries to, patch it up right before the election, well, you're probably going to see, if he manages to win again, he's probably just going to rescind that the day after the networks call him the victor, because that is how these things work. We must vote. We must win. Make no mistake about it. But we have to talk about this because Donald Trump on trial. He's going to be going to trial tomorrow. He should go to trial at some point this week. I believe it is tomorrow, for the New York hush money case, the case being brought by the deranged district attorney in the Southern District of New York, Alvin Bragg. Him and the Attorney General of New York, they campaigned on, we're going to get Trump. Crime is rising in New York. They could be trying a lot of these cases that need to be tried that actually impact the American people, but instead they'd rather use all of these resources and taxpayer dollars for political theater, because we got to go out there and we got to make sure that we can embarrass Donald Trump. We have to embarrass him and his supporters and put him through these nonsensical trials, because that is exactly what they are. They are nonsensical trials. We know that they're bogus. You look in the case, they would not stand anywhere outside of New York or Washington, D.C., which is where another one of those indictments is happening. The Georgia case is in shambles. The Florida case is probably never going to be heard. The D.C. case, it's probably not going to be heard before the election either. And that's still up in the air, but it likely will not be heard before the election. That leaves one case remaining. That is the New York case, and it's better that we're getting it out of the way now, because Donald Trump is not going to be able to effectively campaign when he is in the courtroom. Although I will say this, he's going to be getting a lot of free media coverage without spending a dime, and it's very possible that his numbers could go up during this trial. I don't believe that him having to appear in court is necessarily 100% of a negative thing, But still, when you look at these cases and when they're talked about, the civil cases in particular as well, Donald Trump gained in the polls during those rulings. He gained during the indictments. And I really can't see why he would not be able to gain again during this, especially even if he's convicted. There were polls initially, they were saying, well, 70% of Americans say they wouldn't vote for Trump if he's convicted. Now we're seeing polls that show if he's convicted on this, his numbers either stay the same or maybe even increase or go up. And that's what it comes down to. It comes down to the American people being dumb. Do they know what this is about? What is this trial really about? This trial is only happening because Democrats want to politically persecute their political opponent the same way that Russia and China and all these other places do that they claim are threats to our democracy. They are the real threats to our republic, and that we know. They're going out there trying to put their political opponent in prison. Never really been seen in American history. And it's not like Trump's Hillary Clinton and actually was a criminal, actually committed all of these crimes, because we know that she did a lot of things and got away with it. Biden likely did a lot of things, got away with it. Donald Trump in this case is a little bit different. And you can compare this case, and if we take it at face value that Donald Trump used campaign funds to pay hush money to a deranged woman who goes by the name Stormy Daniels, who was apparently never relevant at all until this case really took place, it's like, okay, here's the deal. Let's assume he did that. Now, John Kerry did that on steroids. Or not John Kerry, John Edwards. John Edwards was John Kerry's running mate, but John Edwards did that on steroids, and he cheated on his wife when she had cancer. It was just absolutely disgusting. This isn't like some celebrity billionaire who might be in like a semi-open relationship ordeal. I'm not saying that that's okay. I'm not going to say that that's fully moral, but I will say that the dynamics of it are a little bit different. Donald Trump's personal life has always been something that is just the way that it is, And it doesn't necessarily mean that he's not an effective leader who's advanced these conservative causes, even socially conservative causes that all these other people in government were never able to do, like these Bushite neocons. Yeah, on paper, they were more socially conservative in certain regards, not when it came down to things like cultural conservatism or nationalistic tendencies, and that we know, as he was a globalist. Trump is a nationalist who, in some issues, socially, he's more of a moderate on, but still, he's advanced those causes better than anybody, better than Mike Pence, by the way, who won't even, talk to another woman unless his wife's in the room, which, honestly, you could make a case that that's not really a big thing to knock him on. Might be weird to some people, but still, the people that are actually, oh, look at me, I'm leading a socially conservative life, they didn't really do much for the movement. They set it back significantly, despite the fact that they virtue signaled quite a bit. It was Donald Trump who overturned Roe v. Wade. Now these same people in the GOP establishment, I'm deeply saddened to hear Trump doesn't want a national ban on abortion. Yeah, same people that talk about electability are mad that Donald Trump doesn't want to commit political suicide by supporting something that A, would never get passed, and B, would be extremely unpopular and give Biden a massive leg up. That's really what it comes down to. But you look at John Edwards. He did it on steroids, and he's free. He didn't get convicted, to my knowledge, at least not of a felony. Hillary Clinton, her campaign with the Steele dossier, that was actual election interference. It just was. Paying for the insurance policy. Did that definitely lower Trump's numbers during his presidency to a certain extent? It absolutely did. It created a conspiracy theory that undermined his presidency, likely impacted the 2018 midterms to a decent amount because of it. They were able to keep their base fired up, and she paid money with campaign funds to funnel it through the Fusion GPS thing all the way through. She was able to pay with campaign funds to make it happen. That's the bottom line. And what happened was, she lost. It was the insurance policy for a Trump win. We're going to try to tie him to Russia with no evidence, create this bogus investigation that went on for 2 to 3 years, wasted taxpayer money, found nothing that really was any sort of wrongdoing. All Russia really did was, place a few, poorly placed Facebook ads that nobody really ever saw. And if anything, they were just on, both sides causing chaos. It wasn't actually like they were really affecting election results. I've never even heard of any of those pages that they were talking about. And I was pretty active on Facebook at the time back during the 2016 election. They were pretty irrelevant meme pages, basically. But still, Clinton, she got away with a misdemeanor. There was a little bit of a fine for that, despite the fact that the payment was far greater than this alleged hush money payment that Donald Trump made, which he didn't technically make. It was Michael Cohen that made it. And there possibly, you could make a case that Michael Cohen was the one that was having the affair, for all we know. He kind of turned on Trump at the same time, and like I've said before, it really seems as if it was there's some shady things in that realm about it. I will say that much. But still, that's not the point, because you have to judge the case at face value. You can't prove the affair beyond a reasonable doubt, which you would technically need to be able to do. But, it was a kangaroo court. What difference does it exactly make when it comes down to that aspect? But what we know is that there was a payment. Donald Trump did reimburse Michael Cohen, who took out a massive sum to funnel to this woman. And Cohen was telling Trump that she's going to come out and say all these things, whether they happened or they didn't. And then I guess Donald Trump was just like, okay, well, we're going to pay her off. Or he was just like, take care of it, maybe. I think that's what people around Trump basically said. They were just saying, yeah, just take care of it, whatever. It's $130,000 to a billionaire. That's really not a lot of money. That's a small drop in the bucket, To the people in the audience, it might be, more than a year or two's salary. But still, for Donald Trump, this guy's a billionaire. Paying that much money, did he really need to use campaign funds to do it? And is there really any evidence that he falsified his business records and didn't report it to the FEC? Because the FEC has already gone through this before. The FEC has already looked at this case multiple times. 4-1, they ruled that they would not pursue it because there simply was not any evidence of wrongdoing. And also on top of it, you talk about the fact that you had a statute of limitations. They changed the law so they could try to get Trump on this. These people are dirty individuals. They are scumbags. That's how they operate. And they are trying to engage in actual election interference, which is ironic because they were like, well, they didn't really disclose it to the FEC as a payment. It's election for electoral purposes. Would it have mattered? I mean, you had women coming out and saying that Trump was assaulting them, raping them. Obviously, there was no evidence for it. Many people that were witnesses discredited their claims. They all conveniently, came out at the same time right after the Clinton tape dropped. It was all planned. Everybody saw right through it. But, still, that didn't impact the election. Did this impact the election? People already knew that Donald Trump was somebody who engaged in a lot of, I guess you would say, not so conservative acts in his personal life. It's just the way it is. I don't think it was the real smoking gun that the Clinton campaign would have even tried to use if they knew about it, because apparently they still went ahead and used it. A lot worse than that, and it didn't really move the needle. There's no Trump paying hush money to other people because, why wouldn't more people come forward and say I was paid hush money by Donald Trump? Why wouldn't Cohen say that? Because it's very likely that Donald Trump, if he's really having these affairs or like in an open relationship, he's probably, why are you going to do it with just one woman? There's probably a lot of women that are out there. So it's like, it doesn't fully seem to add up that maybe it didn't even happen for one and for two. It doesn't really seem like there's enough evidence to really get him on it per the FEC. So it starts Monday. Now, this article is from the BBC, and they say that it is far from a slam dunk. So they're even admitting that it's very difficult that Trump might even get convicted, even in New York with the kangaroo court. And I'm not saying he can't get convicted. I'm not telling people to be complacent, but there are serious problems in this case. And hopefully it, gets over with quickly so Trump can resume to the campaign trail, whatever, you name it. But still, usually this is a misdemeanor, but apparently it's done to conceal a crime. What crime was Trump concealing? Because as far as I'm concerned, having sexual intercourse with somebody is not a crime. It was not meant to conceal a crime at all, from what I can tell. So it should not be a felony charge, but still they're being tried for a felony charge. So already these are trumped up charges, no pun intended, that he's going to have to deal with. On top of it, there's just no evidence that he was using campaign funds as far as I can tell. As far as I can tell, I've not seen any evidence that Donald Trump was using campaign funds to make this payment. And even so, if this was a fair court and you wanted to give him the same punishment that Clinton had, it'd be far less than the punishment she had. And it was a very minuscule fine that Clinton had to pay for the Steele dossier, for paying Fusion GPS to make it happen. So that's what it comes down to. They're going to throw witnesses up there. It's all political theater. It's all political theater. It is a witch hunt. Trump says it's a witch hunt. It is a witch hunt. Make no mistake about it. These people are far left individuals. They are very liberal. They have Trump derangement syndrome. He cannot get a fair trial or ruling if that is the case. You just couldn't. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. You take what you saw with the Chauvin trial, which was a disgrace in how they handled it. I mean, you had jurors that were going to his funeral, allegedly, from what I most recently heard about it. It was a mess. It was an absolute mess with the Chauvin trial. But I will say that this somehow, even though the stakes are not as high, it somehow is a lot worse. And the stakes are higher in terms of the electoral prospects, not necessarily based on the crime or the sentencing, but still. You look at this and people say that Trump's lawyers argued the payments were made to keep the information from Trump's family rather than to hide anything from voters. Some people believe that that would fall flat. Who knows if that's going to be the actual defense when it's all said and done, but we'll see. If it was done right before the election, it was done right before the election. But even then, there were no other hush money payments to all these other people that were coming out and saying things that were far more egregious. So maybe you could say there was some election implications, but that's not worth a felony fine to begin with. But still, here's the deal. It's selective prosecution. It's selective prosecution. It's trumped up charges. And we don't even know if there were campaign funds involved. If there weren't campaign funds involved, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter at all. And if a jury convicts him, he would be a convicted felon before the election. But it is true that if the jury is hung, it's basically out the window. It's going to take a long time if I don't even know if they're going to be able to retry it or how that would work specifically. But at the end of the day, there's 12 people that are going to be on the jury. It has to be a unanimous decision. It's going to have to be unanimous or he is going to walk free. You know, New York is New York. It's very liberal, but still the odds one person could get through the jury, and I'm sure the jury pool selection is going to be extremely biased as well, but still one person getting through. I mean, New York City is probably like 25% Republican-ish. I think Trump's going to probably get above that in New York City proper in 2024. Personally, I think it's very possible you could have just one person, that one juror that can make all the difference on the world. Could they get in the trial? It's entirely possible. But you look at this case here, legal scholars, this was an older article. That's why they put up the primary talk about Trump painting DeSantis as an opportunist. Little blast from the past right there. But still, either way, it just seems as if it's going to backfire. It seems as if it already has backfired quite a bit regarding the polling that we have seen. And from there, I just don't believe that this is something that's going to negatively impact the presidential election any way whatsoever for Trump. If he gets convicted, he gets to be seen as a martyr. It's going to energize his base, and they know it's all bogus. But if he happens to get acquitted or he's not convicted, it shows not only are these courts and these liberals incompetent and they're wasting time, but it also shows that there's no real concern about conviction whatsoever. He's not going to be going to prison, as they say, which usually this crime, usually probation is what it comes down to. When it's all said and done, it would come down to probation being the sentence. but still we know how these judges operate. We know how the legal system operates. They are going to be taking out people that are threats to the system. And when you have somebody right here who is a presidential candidate who is anti-establishment running for political office, the favorite by every single possible metric to take down Joe Biden, yeah, they're going to try to intervene, but I think that they know that it might backfire. Why did they lower the fine on the business case? Should have been zero. Banks testified on Trump's behalf. He was not defrauding the banks, but still that fine was lowered significantly. Why exactly was that the case? That's another question. So will they allow this to be dragged on, and will they possibly just decide to, just roll with a hung jury? Possibly, if not even probably, could end up that way. Then yes, because this is probably the weakest case that we've seen, arguably the weakest case of the four. You want to say that, he was trying to cover up for a crime? There was no crime that he was really covering up for, period. When it comes down to him possibly falsifying business records, we still have zero proof that any business records were falsified, to the point where it doesn't even seem likely that this case would be able to really hold up. Same thing goes for the Georgia trial. Because if you watch you listen to what Trump said in the call with Raffensperger, he never coerced him to make up fake votes for Trump. He never coerced him. He basically said, we need to find these votes. And they were finding boxes of votes. I mean, the margin for Trump in Georgia went down from like 15,000 before the recount to like 11,000. And that's what Donald Trump on the call was talking about. So the Georgia case is nonsense. And by the way, if this case was a problem in New York, why didn't they try to get him on it in 2018 or 2017, even back when the news broke of this alleged affair, which she initially denied, by the way. But still, it's absolutely insane what is going on. It's absolutely nuts. You look at the New York case, the DC case, there's no ground to stand on. Donald Trump did not incite any insurrection just because he got a permit for a peaceful protest. He was the one that told Pelosi to get more cops for the Capitol. She didn't do it. And on top of that, you had cops that were just waving people in. Oh, they'll say, oh, well, they were intimidated. And it's like a lot of these people were walking around. You have a few cases of people that were, I guess you would say, acting in an unsavory manner, and those people probably there should be some punishment for it, but this was at most trespassing that they're going to try to blame Trump for, even though Trump had every right to contest and use every possible legal avenue to talk about how he wanted to change the outcome of the 2020 race. He was not able to do so, but he was trying to exercise what he believed to be his constitutional right to free speech to do it. And that's that case. That's the DC case. We have the Georgia case. We have the New York case. The other case is the Florida case, which that's selective prosecution because they let Biden walk because Biden is old and feeble, but he's somehow fit to be president. But that's what his own Department of Justice is saying. But they want to let Biden walk. But Donald Trump, even though they knew the documents were there, there's been an ongoing legal battle to get him back. There's no evidence that other people are not, getting to them. They're secured by Secret Service, but that's still a problem for Donald Trump somehow. That's a major issue. And Donald Trump is a threat to the democracy. But Joe Biden, he's fine. He's just old, feeble Joe. Even though it was 2009, I believe, when he had some of these documents that he took that were classified, and he was showing them to people, showing them to his ghostwriter. He lied about it too. This is all on record. It's not talked about enough, but this is proven. He was being malicious knowingly, and he walked free. But Trump, he's being tried for it. But the judge is somewhat pro-Trump, it seems, and the left really hates her. I don't think there's any chance Florida, even though it's not going to be heard before the election, is going to result in a trial or conviction if the trial exists and it's not thrown out due to selective prosecution. So that's that for that. We have a massive week on our hands with the trial. It's not talked about a lot because we see what happens in the Middle East when Joe Biden, he told Iran, don't do it. He just said, don't. He was asked by the reporters if he had any words to say about the fact that Iran was going to strike Israel. That definitely made a lot of the pro-Israel side angry. And on top of it, he condemned the attack And then he said, I'll do anything to support them, which has made the pro-Palestine side angry. And then at the same time, he made the pro-Israel side angry again by saying he's not going to like assist them or whatever. So he's flip-flopping around all over the place. He's somebody who has tried to be the candidate that is both pro-Israel and pro-Palestine, and it has backfired. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, just by laying down the situation, has gotten more support from both sides, or at least made a lot of people that were pro-Palestine and in the Biden camp say that they're not going to vote for him. They're voting for Cornel West. They're voting for Jill Stein. Maybe some could go to RFK Jr. I wouldn't bank on it. I wouldn't bet on it completely, but still, we'll see. Either way, that's it for the trial. Now we have to talk about the election, because Donald Trump still leads Joe Biden in the popular vote. He still leads Biden. He leads him by 0.2%. It's always been that way. We saw the new poll out of the New York Times Siena poll, and it came out and it showed that Donald Trump, his lead narrowed to 1, but still, he's in the driver's seat. He is somebody who is still the favorite, and he could lose the popular vote by a few points, and he could still win the general election. So the fact that the popular vote is about tied in the polls, and the fact that national polls in 2022 were pretty accurate, it's not really a very good sign for Joe Biden, is it? You know, his approval rating is in the gutter. You talk about a Biden surge. Well, we can look at the Biden surge. You can go look at Biden's job approval, the number one indicator, not some 13 keys created by some guy who said that he wants Trump to be off the ballot, and that the 9-0 court case was wrongfully decided in the Colorado case. That is exactly what the founder of the 13 Keys has said. I feel like he's becoming senile. He's losing his judgment, because even Ketanji Brown Jackson, of all people, decided to vote that that case had no ground to stand on. But still, Biden's down by 15 points in his approval rating. The economy is not looking good for him. The numbers are getting worse. There's a new report that came out that showed that the CPI is not even showing all of the price increases. The border is a mess. Now, the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, she wants to incentivize people to house illegal aliens instead of trying to get them out of our country and back in their houses, you know, south of the border or wherever. In many cases, they're not even coming from South America. In many cases, these people are coming from the Middle East. They're coming from all over the world. They find a way to get to Mexico or south of Mexico. They cross the Mexican border, and then they cross our border. They're basically invading countries, and if these people were, people in Russia entering Ukraine, they would be calling them invaders, or either side of the conflict in the Middle East would probably say the same thing if it was happening there. So we apparently don't view things the same way when it's our own country, which should be our main focus, our most important focus. It's not to say that foreign affairs shouldn't be de-escalated or that we got to go full-on isolationist, because it doesn't seem like that would make sense given the situation we're in. You know, maybe we could find a way to get there. Maybe we could find a way to get back to the Monroe Doctrine. I think that that's ideal. I think that Trump is the person that kind of would accelerate that more so than anybody else that's obviously in the running at this point and was ever in the running. But you're looking at the polls. Donald Trump is in a very good position. But here's the deal. Biden has no issues to run on. He can't run on the economy because it sucks. He can't run on foreign policy because it sucks. He can't run on immigration either way, because even if he doubles down on open borders, he's going to lose even more support than he's already lost. So he can't run on that. He can't run on anything. Even abortion is going to be tough for him to run on now that Donald Trump is saying, leave it to the states, and Biden is never going to have a way that he can codify Roe. And Trump's campaign is talking about micro-targeting. They want to do, ads in Dearborn, micro-targeted to Muslims, where they say Biden is, thank you, Biden, standing with Israel. It's very deceptive, but it works. It works, and Democrats do it to our primaries. They do it to, the general election in many cases. They're trying to, I guess you would say, depress our turnout. They claim we're the ones doing it to them. We don't do it to them, but they do it to us. We should flip the script and do it to them at that point. getting voters not to support Biden, at least. That's a good thing. When it comes down to the abortion thing, why can't we run ads of Biden talking about him supporting overturning Roe v. Wade back in the 80s and 90s, back when he was pro-life, run those ads and then say, Biden had a trifecta and failed to codify Roe. He has failed women. Vote for Jill Stein or something like that, because those ads would hit. Those ads would be absolutely, I guess you would say, effective, because it's true. And it doesn't come off in a way where it's like, oh, Biden can turn and say, give me a bigger majority, because not enough people really care about that issue to make up the ground he needs in Ohio, in Montana, and a lot of these other places. And the candidates running in both of those races on the Republican side have come out and said that they don't support a national ban, and Trump doesn't support a national ban. He defused the bomb. Some people say he's not going far enough, but at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to get one passed. It might even get overturned in the courts, and we don't want that to happen. And on top of it, we need to be in a position where at the national level, you work on something like Hungary does to incentivize families. You work to, reorient the tax code into doing that, and you will cut the abortion rate at the national level, and it's going to make abortion less common. That's probably going to decrease the favorability for states to have, abortion access in their states. It's going to lead to the abolishment of the practice. But instead, people would rather Donald Trump go out there and virtue signal. That's what they would want. He's virtue signaling, because you have to be pragmatic. You can have convictions. It's a very emotional issue to a lot of people. It really is. People on the right, it's emotional to them. People who disagree, it's emotional to them for very misguided reasons. But still, it's an emotional issue. You have to play it well if you want to win. I want to win. That's what I want to do. I want to win. I want to achieve the power. I want to get Biden out of there. We have to rebuild our nation. We're not going to rebuild our nation by reelecting Biden, just because some people might have to drive to a different state to have a horrific procedure. It's just the way it is. And the swing states, for the most part, they have it codified in their constitutions. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, now with the Supreme Court there, Michigan. Democrats really have wasted a lot of ammunition on that in 2022. In 2023, it's not likely that they're going to have as much pull in 2024, because it's in the Michigan Constitution. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, they've got it. And I'm not a fan that that's the case, but I'm saying that it's not going to be milked to Biden's advantage as much. Of course, these very far left individuals are going to be like, oh, I saw the ad of somebody in Alabama. They were not able to get an abortion. It's like, okay, well, first of all, it's happening under Biden. And second of all, you don't live in Alabama. Let Alabama decide what their laws should be. If people don't like it, they don't have to live in Alabama. But that's what Alabama wants. You talk about democracy, that's democracy in action. Ironically enough, it's federalism. It's the way these things should be. It's the way these things should work. At the local level, yeah, Democrats are energized in Michigan, Pennsylvania, or they were in the midterms about it. But now it's less of a major issue for a lot of people. And Biden has nothing that he's able to run on. So what is the real takeaway here? Can Biden win? Yeah. The answer is obviously he can win. And I'll tell you why he can win. It's turnout, because it doesn't matter what the state of affairs are. Donald Trump didn't have a lot of key issues that he was winning in the exit polls. And even issues like the economy and crime, the economy was not able to be where it would have been before COVID. And when it came down to the issue of crime, still a lot of crime was happening under Trump. It's not like you're going to sway a lot of independents. But now Trump has every issue in his column. But that was a close election, regardless. When take the just take it at face value. It's very close. And now 2024 is likely going to be close. Every election is a close election in this day and age. It's the way it works. It's the way that the map is set up. It's the way that the polarization has affected the electorate. And the main takeaway here is that we need to get people voting. Democrats have an operation. But at the end of the day, will it work out for them is another question if we build an operation. Because I found this, which was the most interesting thing I've ever really seen regarding the polls about people that may have voted in 2022 or may have sat out 2022, that is, but are supposedly going to vote in 2024. And here's the takeaway. A lot of those polls did show Trump winning those voters, which kind of takes the whole, well, Trump is at fault for the midterms thing already off the table, because it was 100% due to base turnout. And these people are not Republican voters necessarily. That's why registered Republican turnout was high enough in certain midterm states like Arizona, but a lot of registered Republicans do tend to vote for Biden in that state now because the state's different than what it used to be. And that's the way it's always going to be from this point forward. Still, it's a winnable state. But a lot of the Trump electorate did sit home, and the lower propensity voters across every demographic tend to be more favorable for Donald Trump. Democrats have given up on voter registration drives because they know that it's going to backfire. They're starting to give up on voter registration drives because it's just not working out for them, even among black voters. Now, I'm not telling Republicans, well, this means you need to register these voters in Detroit City proper, because that's not how it works, first of all, because even then they lean towards Biden. That's the way it is. But Hispanics, on the other hand, Hispanics that are entering the electorate, as we saw in 2020, they lean heavily towards Trump. And I'm not saying you can't micro-target black Trump voters in cities and black areas, because you can, and you probably should. I think that would be beneficial for Republicans to chase every ballot. But in terms of these blanket voter registration drives, like those probably have to be better suited in Republican areas or among demographics that for sure the lower propensity voters are going to swing more Republican. But when you look at this, Donald Trump is at 32% with black voters who have voted in 0 elections since 2018. Now, we could debate if that total's inflated. It probably is. Black polls typically show that black voters, vote for Trump more than they actually do. I mean, they overestimate Republicans with black voters, but maybe if you had higher turnout, it'd be different. I don't know, but that's the way it goes. And they also underestimate white support for Republicans and the flip side, so it kind of evens out when everything is weighted. But still, the fact that Trump is at that level among black voters who have voted in 0 elections since 2018 is absolutely astounding. And if you get those specific voters out and voting, that would be a paradigm shift. Now, keep this in mind. The Hispanic vote, this is another thing, because those who have not voted or very frequently sit out elections, for example, like 2018, 2022, it shows that they lean Republican. They're not like Hispanics who have turned out every election cycle. And Trump got them out in 2020, didn't necessarily get them out so much in 2016. 2022, the percentages were pretty close to 2020. Some places they outperformed, some places maybe not so much because of ancestral Democrats in South Texas, things like that. But still, it shows that there's an underlying trend. And if Trump is on the ballot again, he likely gets in the 40s with Hispanic voters. And if he does that, and black voters don't really come out for Biden at the level that they did in 2020, you're seeing red Georgia, you're seeing red Arizona, and you're seeing red Nevada. And that's why the Nebraska state legislature dropping the ball was dumb, because they handed the election to Joe Biden, if that was the case and nothing else happened. And I still think Trump is the favorite. He can win the Rust Belt. I think he will. But still, the fact that the Nebraska state legislature could not make the state winner take all proves that they are cowards. There's no reason for the proportional system to exist. They need to get rid of it. They need to grow a spine. But they don't, because a lot of these, deep red state parties, they're weak. And they just hand the left victories left and right. And that's the way it goes. But you look at the Hispanic vote, It is something that Donald Trump is likely going to improve with. He will probably make gains with black voters. Is it going to be ridiculous, a ridiculous margin? Like, is he going to get 25%? I doubt it. But could he get, 20% with black men? Possibly. And I think that that is something that would be a positive development in a place like Georgia, a place like Michigan, where blacks are about 15% of the electorate, not as big as some of these other southern states, but I mean, for a Rust Belt state, it's bigger than it is in Wisconsin. So if you make marginal gains here and there, that's a very, very positive thing. White voters as well, because they don't really get enough attention at times. They're also the majority of the electorate, but it does feel weird to say the white vote. And I understand why people don't chase, quote unquote, the white vote, because the white vote is not uniform. They were back in the day, more so, and even then they weren't entirely, but white college-educated voters and white non-college-educated voters are two different situations. White non-college-educated voters tended to be more Democrat-leaning outside of the South until recently, and even in the South for a long time, they still were Democrat-leaning. Obviously, the South was more Democrat, but those voters have moved vastly to the right when it comes to voting patterns. And Donald Trump does really well with them, but other Republicans don't get the margins. But when Donald Trump is on the ballot, they do. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, look at how left they moved in 2018 even. And then compare how they bounced back in 2020. And compare that to a state like Georgia or Arizona, where the 2020 margins and the 2018 margins were not all that different from each other. It's because of this very fact. And obviously, Republicans at large are going to have to rectify the problem. They need to get their turnout operation going. Some states, they do well when Donald Trump is not on the ballot. And some states, they don't do so well when Trump is not on the ballot. But you look at this, the white vote, a lot of this is, disaffected white voters. They're backing Donald Trump 51-19, people who have not voted. Those who have voted in one election, presumably 2020, but did not vote in 18 or 22, this is a big portion of the electorate, and they backed Trump by 25 percentage points. Those who voted in 2 of those elections backed Trump by just 4. And those who voted in all 3 that's 50-50. And like I said, polls typically underestimate Trump with whites. They overestimate him with blacks. Hispanics depends on the pollster. I think Trump's going to crack 40 among Hispanics. But we talk about the white working class vote. Wisconsin is huge. Wisconsin is a gold mine. Michigan can be a gold mine, especially with the whole auto industry. That is a big, big thing. And people talk about, well, Michigan polls are showing Trump is gaining with blacks, and they're showing that, it's all because of the Palestine thing. It's not. That might eat into Biden's margins. I'm not saying that it won't, but it's a lot deeper than that. It's about Donald Trump being on the ballot and Trump connecting with those voters and Biden wanting to decimate Detroit's auto industry with his mandates. A lot of people that live in suburban Detroit, even those that have a college degree and are, middle-aged, they tend to work in the auto industry in some way or another. They tend to work in the auto industry, and it's a big, big mess what's happening there. And then the border crisis is hitting Michigan. Whitmer's essentially giving Trump a gift by incentivizing these people to move to Michigan, because she's incentivizing these people to be housed. Who's not going to take the incentivization if they need the extra money? You already need the extra money with this economy for a lot of people. And on top of it, it inadvertently does help Trump, even though it's bad for Michigan. Not necessarily rooting for it to happen, but if it happens, Trump needs to milk the issue so he can go out there and win. And that's how you win. You have to energize turnout. And these crime gangs in Metro Detroit, Chilean crime gangs from Chile, they are invading homes, they are squatting, they are robbing them blind all across Metro Detroit. It's a big problem. They came in during the Biden administration because of Biden. They came up from the southern border. They crossed the southern border. And now they're terrorizing the people of this great nation, or maybe I should say once great nation, but we will make it great again, as the hat does say, and we need to make it great again. But the RNC needs to take note, and they need to start going out there, and they need to start finding these people and registering these people. Maybe not necessarily in blanket voter registration drives, but find, like when it comes to the black voters, find those 32%. How do you find those 32%? How do you get them out and voting? That's a question that does need to be answered, because those are, a lot of people. And that doesn't mean that they're the only focus, though, because the majority of the electorate is white and a plurality is white non-college. When you break whites up by education, that is Trump's strongest demographic. That needs to be, addressed as well. But in some places, like, where Arizona, you're somewhat maxed out there, and they're not as big of a population, then you find the Hispanic voters in South Phoenix, and you get them out and voting, because they are moving right, and they probably move right again, and they possibly save Trump in the state of Arizona by moving to the right as well. So that's that. That's the data. This is very interesting stuff. I'm sure that it's going to be addressed over the next, I guess you would say, few months. Trump is definitely going to have to open up some field offices. People say, well, Biden has field offices. Trump doesn't. And it's like, okay, well, he also had a lot of money. They were saying Trump was broke. They were saying he's barely above RFK Jr. And now they're basically, I wouldn't say about even, but that gap has been significantly cut in the national election in terms of the fundraising. And he's continuing to cut into that gap. And during this trial, he might be able to raise even more money through small dollar donations. It's really something that's going to energize his base. So I encourage people to donate to him as well. But still, we have to get to super chats. We're 48 minutes in. It's been a way too long of a wait for the people in chat. But Johnny Heartdog says, quick question. What do you think of the Gateway pundit? I think they're right-wing doom and gloom. They never post good news, yet most conservative channels get most of their sources from them. Well, I don't get my sources from them rarely, if ever. Personally, I don't know why they do that. It's probably for clicks, because I think that they want to kind of draw in a certain crowd that they know that they can exploit and capitalize on for more clicks. So that's probably why it is. Also, part of me wants Trump's trial to go really bad, because every time it does, he surges in the polls. I think that's partly why he's winning. Yet another part of me wants these bogus cases to end. I think a lot of people agree with that. I mean, him going to jail is something that I don't think that is going to happen. But if it does actually happen, that's a big wild card on the race. Who knows how that's going to impact it, but it's very possible that it still could somehow find a way to backfire, because everything they've thrown at this guy has completely backfired. So, let's see. Manny says, why can't he appeal the hush money case to SCOTUS? Well, what constitutional right can he try and point out is necessarily being violated? Because I think that that's what you usually have to do if you're trying to appeal the case. And usually you need a verdict to appeal the case. The one reason why he's appealing certain, charges of the other cases to the Supreme Court is largely because of a constitutional text regarding the presidential powers and certain laws that have been on the books for a while. I don't know if Trump is really going to be able to appeal this one, or he probably would have been in the process of doing so. He's tried to delay the trial. He's tried to, put in certain stipulations. They really haven't budged. Dustin Carner says Republicans need to not be so anti-higher education. I'm not saying that Republicans will win the college vote again, but at the same time, they need to put in effort. Well, I think it's a loser mentality to tell people that are competent people, they're conservative, that they need to go into a trade because the colleges are evil and liberal, which again, colleges are going to be liberal, but I don't think that people just go into college and come out and they're super far left every single time. I think it's just more of the demographics that are attracted to attending college. They tend to be more left-leaning. And also, we need to take back the institutions. You cannot take back the institutions by becoming a plumber. All the plumbers, the plumbing institutions, it's all conservative. Everybody knows it. If you want to be a plumber and, you probably are not capable of going to college, maybe your grades aren't that good, you don't really have any interest in anything else, that's one thing. I think it's a good thing to enter a trade. Trade schools should be made more available. The people that go to school and get these gender studies degrees are wasting money, and those people probably have no business attending college. But still, when it comes down to it, it's like, yeah, it's a big, big mess. Eric Kirk says this has been an interesting week of news. We may agree that Congress decided to thumb their noses at the Fourth Amendment with the FISA renewal. Yeah, it's a big mess. Explorer Bear says, I heard that Trump will pick Tim Scott as VP. VP is very up in the air. We hear a different person, a different name, a different shortlist every single week, it seems, and nothing ever comes of it. Now they're talking about Marco Rubio, who I honestly may get hate for saying I don't think he'd be the worst pick in the world for various reasons, but is he really going to try to pick someone from Florida and have them move? I don't know, but still. Dustin Carner says, do you think Kristi Noem and Rosendale cheated like with each other? I've never heard anything about that. I've heard the affair rumors on both of their cases. I have not heard any affair rumors that they cheated with each other. Olivia Williams says, Oregon and New York governor's races were close because abortion was settled law. I worry Robinson will be hurt by abortion not being settled law in North Carolina. It worries me. It's possible, but it just comes down to the whole, presidential election, because that kind of is the main spotlight. Robinson is there. He's a likable guy, but it is true that, he is somebody who engages in a lot of rhetoric surrounding that issue, or has in the past, more so than not, where he's basically said, we'll set a 12-week law and keep chipping away at it, which is exactly what you need to do. But if you just say it verbatim, it's going to be played on ads, things like that. I do think that Robinson has a chance at victory. I don't believe he's got zero shot. North Carolina is not a state that I believe Trump is going to lose. He may win it by closer to 5 than, his 2020 margin. That might be enough to carry Robinson over. We'll just have to see. But also, if Robinson loses, does he run for Senate in 2026? I think that he probably doesn't if he ends up losing. I mean, I don't know what's next for him. Maybe Congress could be something that could suit him. I think he could easily get in Congress. I think he'd be a very entertaining Congress member, because you see a lot of speeches given on Capitol Hill by certain representatives. He's definitely going to be a little bit more, entertaining, playing into the entertainment side of things more so than not. So there's that. The Iranian Putin says, don't. It's true. Username checks out, by the way. Security TV says, changing laws arresting your political rival is the definition of election interference. They could put him in jail and I'd still vote for him. I think that there's not a single person who supports Trump that would be less emboldened to support him if he's in jail. And when you look at something like this, the data up on the screen, where the lower propensity voters are more inclined to support Trump, I feel as if he's in jail, there's a chance he can win, because those people are going to come out in droves for Donald Trump, even if they didn't vote in 2020. The fact that the people that didn't vote in 2020 at least now support Trump by a 44-26 margin is insane. And that doesn't even include people who may have voted in 2022 but didn't vote in 2020 or whatever. But let's see. Scott B says, hey, Rep, fan of the show, did you hear about the video Tim Pool made on Texas Social Security voter fraud? Could they actually steal? Yeah, all that's fake, and I'll tell you why. You look at the actual statistics. Texas has registered not even 100,000 new voters this calendar year. So I understand the need for concern about the report. People apply, doesn't mean they get accepted. You need a photo ID to vote in the state of Texas. You can register without a photo ID, but it's very, very unlikely that that is happening at high rates, because the actual data just doesn't back it up. And the same data showed that they were doing it before 2022 by that logic, and it didn't really move the needle at all. Dean Cream Between says, ready to fast forward to November already and skip all the BS. It's true. Pendoc says, this chart is bad for Trump. If that people didn't turn out for him in 2020, there's zero chance they will by now. I disagree. There's no evidence that these people were all ardent supporters of Trump in 2020. And the same argument could be made for Biden. Oh, if everybody voted, well, Biden, there's no way that that Trump could win, they would say. It'd be a lot worse. And they were saying Republicans are suppressing the turnout because they thought they would be doing better. Now that narrative is out the window because higher turnout in many cases, not all, higher turnout in Austin, Texas, probably means that Biden's going to do better in Texas. But higher turnout in a place like Tarrant County, Texas, a little bit more iffy on that front. But overall, it does seem as if people who are low propensity do tend to lean Republican. It's not great news for Republicans. It's not. But when the polls already have you at 50-50 with likely voters, and you register more voters, get those voters out and voting, that means you're going to do a lot better. That's what it means. So Dustin Carner says, I'm a college graduate and conservative Southerner. I get shit from more blue-collar people when topic is mentioned because I don't do much trades. Well, it's a problem I really feel like that comes down to conservative media because they're the ones telling people out there who are young and conservative and pay attention to this stuff, don't go to college. I think that some people, maybe you don't need to go to college. If you're not capable of, putting up a fight, maybe you're just not all that intelligent, and that's okay. But maybe you're really good at something else. Go into that. If you can't get into college, I really feel as if maybe you don't need to go, or if you want to go to 2 years at a community college and then transfer to save money, do that. I think that's perfectly fine. Get good grades, work hard. You should be able to get some sort of financial aid if you can't afford it. But when it comes down to the whole don't go to college thing, we need people going to college that can, and if they want to actually occupy the levers of power, that includes education, that includes entertainment, that includes, in some cases, I wouldn't necessarily say like CEOs, but when it comes down to like departments of, public relations at companies and things like that, where they're doing all these advertisements that are woke, that's where you need to target. It's not necessarily the, every corporation is bad because they're inherently woke or whatever. A lot of the CEOs and CFOs are some of Trump's biggest donors. The problem is that they're just a little ambivalent to certain things that are happening in their company because they don't care. They're trying to, pander to a certain community to sell something. And sometimes, like in the case of Bud Light, it backfired. But when it comes down to it, we need to occupy certain structures. That's what we need. If you care a lot about certain things and you are capable and that's something you're interested in, go for it. That's what we need people doing right now. We don't need people sitting out the fight because, this professor is liberal. I had liberal professors in college. I've actually dropped a couple classes because I felt as if they were too liberal, and I didn't really want to go through it because I know that it would have just been exhausting. I don't want to get up at 6 a.m. and hear how Trump is evil, Trump is racist, evil dictator, whatever, for 2 hours when I'm trying to basically stay awake. Doesn't exactly work out too well. But still, when it comes down to it, there were other liberal professors that I had that were not like the worst in the world where my grades would be affected by it. And I could see right through it. There were polls they would do. They would actually do polls. I think it was like 40% of the class actually approved of Donald Trump's job performance. And that was at a time when I think like 44% approved nationwide. So it's not like college is all like, cringe or whatever. There's a lot of liberals in the institutions and the left organizes on them. But it doesn't necessarily mean that colleges need to remain these liberal bastions or that they're inherently liberal and that you can't send your kids to college. Raise your kids right so the liberal professors don't get to brainwash your kids. That's what you need to do. You want to send your kid to private school, you can afford it. You don't want to send to public school, fine. I think it's a great thing to do when you're talking about their K-12 education. If you want them to attend a more conservative, if they want to attend a more conservative campus or whatever, then another conservative campus, that's fine, but don't, not go to Harvard because you get into both Harvard and Liberty University and Harvard's left and Liberty's right. That's not to knock Liberty. But if I could get into Harvard, I'm not going to go to Liberty. Make no mistake about it. That's what it comes down to. Let's see. Trevor Williams says, do you think the strange events of 2020 will discourage a fair amount of Trump supporters from voting? I really don't think it will, but at the same time, there is an argument to be made that we can't have that defeatist mindset. I don't want to hear about the 2020 election in 2024. We know what happened. There was a lot of things that happened. Some of which were possibly direct interference. There were legitimate concerns on that front, and there were a lot of proven election interference as well. You talk about big tech censorship, things like that may not happen as much now because we control a major wing of big tech, and the other companies have to compete with them, so they're less likely to censor certain things. But YouTube and other platforms have amended their guidelines. So now you can talk about, this election was skewed by force. And I'm still using careful lingo when I say it because you never know who's going to be reviewing the reports or whatever. But still, it's like they probably would not be doing that if they really thought that it was something that helped us. And you saw in 2022 people that really embraced it. I'm not saying that's why they fell short. There's a lot of reasons. I don't even think it's a top 5 reason why, but you didn't really see anyone win an election that came out and said it that wasn't in like an R plus 4 or 5 state. I think the closest you might say is Ron Johnson, but still, it's a very sussy election. The next election will probably have some sussiness, some shenanigans as well, but I think that 2016 likely did too. I think that it didn't matter. I think that there's more of a, there was more of a market for it in 2020, given certain things and certain law changes were made. That was direct interference because of COVID. Now it's like a middle ground. I think the level of sussiness will be in the middle, kind of like 2022. And I think we're going to have to go from there. But, it is true that we can't exactly say, every loss is because of this. Some losses may be. So a lot of losses can be. But at the end of the day, I think that it's not something that is worth talking about in 2024, just like talking about, Obama's birth certificate in 2016 wasn't necessarily, even 2012, or after it was like released or whatever, it wasn't something that was seen as a winning issue. So I'm not saying that Trump can't say certain things, but, to say the S word, that's something that I feel like demoralizes, but to say the R word is a little bit better because it was actually that objectively, even by their standards, 100% proven there was direct election interference by big tech, by many donors who worked to change laws over time. They wrote an article about it on Time Magazine, actually, and it was talking about the fortification is what they called it. But in reality, it's like, it's not going to work in terms of the notion that if we say it, it's going to increase turnout. I think that it just depends how we do it, and also we need to still motivate people and mobilize. I guess I try to merge those words together. But we need to make sure that people vote regardless. And I think that if we talk about it too much, it might be able to demoralize people. That's why I don't like talking about it too much. That's why I like talking about the 2020 election results at face value. Part of it has been community guidelines, but it's like if I say, well, Trump needs to make up 1.2% of ground in Pennsylvania, you have to factor that out regardless, because if that was the margin he fell short of quote unquote shenanigans by, if Biden even, if Pennsylvania was even of that margin, we don't know the margin, but what we know is that he needs to make up 1.2%. He needs to make up 1.2%. If I say, well, we don't know the margin, no, he needs to make up 1.2%. Otherwise, you're going to demoralize people. It's going to be a problem. I think Trump being on the ballot is a big bonus, though. It's a big bonus for Republicans. But it's like, Democrats are talking about the whole the black vote in the primaries is voting for Biden as well, so there's no shift. I'm not saying there's going to be a seismic shift there, but I will say that primary is a little bit different because Biden didn't get good turnout. I actually went through the city results in Detroit City proper of all the elections from 2016 in the primaries to now and in the general. Turns out that you look at the numbers, Donald Trump got, I think, almost as much combined in the 2024 primary than he got in 2016 and 2020 there. But Biden fell. Biden fell significantly in Detroit from 2020 to now. And that was technically now he got, I think, a little bit less of his vote share statewide. But it's like he does have an energy problem. I'm not saying these people are all going to vote for Trump. I don't think Trump is going to get 20% of the black vote. I don't think he is. I think he might get mid-teens, and that might be enough depending on turnout to just doom Biden in Georgia and North Carolina. But when you're looking at it, it's like this is something that's an issue. Dustin Carner says, "What's worse, gay marriage or consensual cousins?" I honestly have no idea how to answer that question. I'll just say I oppose both. I oppose both. I think that first cousins marriage should not be legal. I think that gay marriage becoming legal has led to a lot of negative things for the society. Remember the memes they put up? The liberals, the smug, arrogant dipshits on the left, they put up the memes. They'd be like, oh, here's what happens if gay people get married. And like one of the things was national outbreaks will break out or whatever. Like we saw that with COVID, ironically enough. Was not related, but still ironic. And then it talked about, oh, well, they're going to teach about gay sex in schools. And they're doing it now. They're literally doing it now. The slippery slope is not a slippery slope. It is an avalanche plunge. It is not a fallacy. It is human nature. And we're seeing it unfold. When you devalue marriage, you say these relationships are 100% identical, and some conservatives just say, oh, freedom, this, that, and the other thing. Well, it's not freedom anymore. It's not don't tread on me when they're treading on your own children, partially because of it. It is a bulwark. It is a slippery slope. It is moving the needle in one direction or another. Now, my position on the issue is the same as abortion. It's you at least nationally, that should be the stance. It was a wrongfully decided decision. Kick it back to the states. Chip away from it there. It's not as much of a third rail. It is something that polls poorly, but it's like if Obergefell gets overturned, it's not going to impact the election. It will have zero impact on the election. It's semi-codified, sadly, and I think 48 states have it legal or something like that. So it wouldn't really impact things a whole lot. I don't think it's going to get overturned until after the election. It'll probably get overturned at some point. But I think that's actually a bigger problem, though, than cousinal marriage, because what cousins get married that we know of? Like, you can't really point to it. And usually if it happens, it might go under the radar. But, and it will lead to problems. You know, kids that kind of are products of incest tend to be a little bit, I guess you would say, not exactly like the rest of us in some way or another. But when it comes down to it, it's like, yeah, I think that the impact of that being it's a significantly smaller issue, altogether, neither of them should be legal. Marriage is between one man and one woman, not Mormon. And technically it's not even the way the plural works, but still, when it comes down to it, it's between one man and one woman. It's always been that way throughout human history. It's always going to be that way. That's pretty much the way it should be. And I can see no argument to the contrary. You want to talk about people coming together, forming a union for tax purposes? Okay, that's one thing. You know, I'm not saying I'm going to take away hospital visitation, this, that, and the other thing. That's all basically debunked anyways. That was never really much of a problem. This was something that was done that didn't really impact things that much other than devalue the current value of relationships that are meant to create life. That's all this has been about, and to move the ball down the field to the transgender movement. And what that has done, it's an industry. This is all supported by industry, medical industries. That's why they support it. They make a lot of money off a lot of these things. It's a pharma problem. That's why they want more kids to have to go through this. And they want people to be confused psychologically. They want to get into their psyche. So they need therapy. So they need medication. It's a big mess. It is a big, big mess that we see on our hands right now. But let's see. David Salavi says, will people be mad at Biden for Israel policy who have a squad member for their rep come out and just not vote Biden or not show up at all because Biden is angry? Well, I don't think there's many people that have a squad rep, I will say. But Ilhan Omar might get primaried out. Rashida Tlaib might get primaried out as well, for all we know, this cycle. I don't know if it's going to happen, but they are making sure that Omar's going to have a funded challenger. She almost lost when she didn't have one. I think she could go down. We'll see. If she does go down, then it doesn't matter. But I feel like if that's really their one issue and they just can't vote for Biden and they really care deeply about voting for Ilhan Omar, which most people don't even know who their congressperson is, just to be honest. But then they'll probably come out and vote if they really feel like voting's really important. They'll vote for Jill Stein. Maybe, I think Cornel West would be another one that would get a lot of votes as well. The fact that there's more than one high-profile option for the far left to pick from is insanely good news for Trump, because RFK Jr. is not taking more votes away from Donald Trump than he's taking away from Biden. At best, you could say 50-50. Now that he picked the liberal VP, that's a game changer. That is entirely a game changer, because now it's definitely tilting towards him taking more votes away from Biden. He's not leaning heavily into the COVID thing. He's not leaning heavily into the foreign policy thing, where he's kind of more in line with Trump than Biden when it comes to both of those things. He's leaning into everything else. And that's pretty much it. I feel like the average RFK Jr. voter is going to be the person that says, I don't like either option. And a lot of those people voted for Biden in 2020, even if they voted for Gary Johnson in 2016, Biden not being popular. A lot of those people may go to RFK Jr. He actually is running a campaign that has money more so than Johnson really had. So there's that. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Sam Madsen says, if Trump wins, Thomas and Alito need to step down immediately. Yeah, I kind of agree, and I'm somebody who loves both of those Supreme Court justices, but they need to retire, especially Thomas, because he's getting old. He can enjoy retirement. He has had a hell of a career, and we can replace him with somebody that would be very, very solid as well. Alito, we're going to have to find a really good replacement. We can't trust the Federalist Society to make the decisions. We can't trust McConnell and that wing of the party, which McConnell won't be the lead confirmer, but we can't trust those people to necessarily dictate what's going to happen. Pendoc says, why Biden got more votes in Wisconsin's primary than Trump and doubled Trump's votes in New York? Are you sure that New York will be close in 2024? I think it will be closer. I don't think that the primary is any indicator in New York. People had no reason to turn out on either side, and New York has a ridiculously higher amount of registered Democrats than registered Republicans. That's all there is to it. Now, why did Biden get more votes in the Wisconsin primary? Because of the fact that you had a snowstorm on Election Day. Again, Democrats take advantage of early voting, Republicans don't. And then we wonder why turnout was lower. It's like there's a snowstorm. Weather was horrible. They still had a good night, though. I mean, it's also important to note that a lot of Trump's base in Wisconsin that lives in those, driftless area counties, while his percentage was high, turnout wasn't high enough. I don't think he's losing support in those counties, though. I just think that it was largely because of the fact that these people were less likely to turn out. So there's that. Alex Ledbetter says, trust me, avoid Pomona College in Stanford. Well, I mean, I haven't heard much about Pomona, but Stanford, I mean, if somebody gets into Stanford, they want to go to Stanford, they can go to Stanford. It's a very good school. It's very liberal, but a lot of schools are very liberal. That's just the way it is. You want to get a good college degree and move the ball down the field, you're going to have to get a good education. I didn't used to think it had to be that way, but it has to be that way. People need to go to the best school they can get into. And I mean, they can weigh financial considerations as well. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but the best school they can get into and still, I guess you would say, not have to go in a ridiculous amount of debt if certain schools are offering better deals. So Gabriel Springer says, What do you think about Pennsylvania's 1st District primary? Mark Hook is clearly better than the biggest rhino in Congress, Fitzpatrick, but I don't know if he can win a general in the district. Yeah, I would vote for Fitzpatrick, honestly, because if he loses, that seat flips. There's just no point. He is a rhino, but when it comes down to it, he's not one of these people that is actively like an open, I guess you would say, backstabber 40% of the time like some of these other people. Fitzpatrick is somebody who will vote 80% of the time with Donald Trump. The other guy is going to vote for a Democrat speaker. Fitzpatrick voted for Jim Jordan to be speaker. Fitzpatrick had his redemption arc kind of in that sense. But there's no reason to primary him out, and I don't think he's going to get primaried out. So let's see. Dustin Carner says Colorado took a libertarian weed guns approach. I haven't seen what they've done on guns. I haven't seen anything Colorado did on guns. I know they're more libertarian, though, and as a result, they've gotten more and more liberal. When you don't use power, this is what happens. And there's a lot of libertarians out there who, are lolbertarians because they don't actually get anything done. They think that, if we just shrink the size of government and, cave on every social issue, that every possible thing is going to be solved. And that's not how it works. Deregulation, you can't deregulate your way out of everything. Deregulation in the economy is usually a good thing, but deregulating every aspect of society when you have a society that is sick and broken is not going to solve any problems. It's going to make them a hell of a lot worse. John Waffle H2P says, I know she's no good, but what do you think of Jill Stein's foreign policy? Well, probably in many aspects, one could say it's better than Biden's foreign policy. But, she's the type of person that instead of sending aid to Israel or Ukraine, she's going to send half the GDP to Palestine. And that's not something that I support either. So I'd have to say that Jill Stein's foreign policy is probably on paper. There's some aspects of it that might be more positive because she'll critique, the Iraq war or something like that. But that's pretty much it. DJ Aftershock says raw low 1Q RAP is supporting Trump because he's a trailer park Blumph cultist. I'm voting and donating to Orange Buffett because of immigration in Israel. See, that's how this is a parody he's sending of some guy on Twitter who's somewhat prominent, but not really, and is one of the most elitist people you'll ever meet. He had TDS for 3.5 years. He supported DeSantis vehemently, but now he's coming home to Trump. Now, the problem is he's still saying Trump's going to lose, Trump's going to lose, Trump's going to lose, which, again, there's no metrics he can point to. He says Trump needs a black swan event to win. Biden needed like 50 to win in 2020, ironically enough, for one. But for two, it's just not true. Biden literally needs a black swan event to win. And no, the Arizona ruling is not likely the black swan. There is no black swan event that's going to single-handedly carry Biden or Donald Trump is going to be carried to victory. It's not going to be because of that event. If it does happen, it happens. But if Biden loses, it's not going to be because Trump can't win right now, because Trump is objectively the favorite right now. So it doesn't make sense why people are dooming and they're saying, well, Trump can't win this election. Even if they support Trump, it's dumb. It's different if you're like, trying to run a candidate statewide where it's a little bit of a long shot and you have to work overtime to get them over the hump in the race. And maybe in some cases you can't do it. I get that. I'm rooting for people that are maybe underdogs right now. I think that I probably would rather be Josh Stein than Mark Robinson. But do I think that Robinson is like a very good shot at victory? I think it's like 50-50, close to it. Some people might not. But it's like, yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say 24 hours a day, Robinson's cooked, Robinson's cooked. No, I'm literally not going to say it. He's got a very clear path to victory, even if it is hard. It's the way it is. So, okay. Jimmy Payne says, Dems want illegals to vote. That's millions of votes for Biden. What are your thoughts? It's not going to happen. You really can't get registered to vote in many cases without being a resident. And even if you try to work around the system in those states that it is allowed in, you do need some sort of voter ID, and you'd see some excess registrations. I'm sure there's going to be isolated incidents of it, but it's going to be relatively rare in my opinion. Rare, I guess you would say, enough where it wouldn't impact any result of the election. So there's that. Now, in a place like California, where there's universal, VBM, where everybody gets sent a ballot, some people get sent multiple because of past addresses, that could be a little bit of a concern, but I'm not super concerned about, the Texas thing that we saw because of the voter rolls and how those were done. So a lot of people do need to go in person to register as well. And there's going to be, we'll see if there's any concerns leading up to it. But if you hear in the media that there's stuff going on, put your head down and vote. I feel like a lot of people heard what was happening in Arizona in 2022 in 2022, and they just sat home. And the same thing goes for the whole Sharpie thing back in 2020. Some people heard the news, maybe they didn't vote. They literally won without lifting a finger. Some of the news might not even be real that you see on social media. Just like the news that we saw from Tim Pool or whatever, I'm not saying that he was purposely getting it wrong, but some of this stuff attracts a lot of viewers because people have been hurt many times and they're like, wow, this means people must be voting. That means we got no shot. It's demoralizing. It's just not true. The Republican Secretary of State in Texas came out and said it's not true. And they've done a good job of keeping the voter rolls pretty tight. So John Waffle says the top law firms only hire from Yale, Harvard, and Stanford. Well, there you go. That is true. Not only. I mean, it depends. But if you're talking about the upper echelons, it definitely helps you if you're trying to get a job out of college to have a good school on your resume compared to a school that's mediocre. That's pretty much the way it is. But still, I mean, there's a lot of nuance to it. There's a lot of nuance. Dean Cream Between says, call me an optimist, but if New York keeps trending to the right, they could be competitive in the 2030s. New York City voters are fed up and Zeldin almost won in 2022. Well, it's possible. I mean, if you're going to be telling somebody in the year 2000 that, in the 2010s, Texas might be somewhat competitive, they probably would be like, yeah, no, there's no way it's going to happen. But 2020 was within 6 points. I mean, it's definitely closer than 20 points. And the same thing goes right now in the states like California. I don't think California is going to be competitive, but do I think Republicans are going to make some sizable gains in California in the long run? I do believe so. And the same thing goes for New York. The same thing goes for Illinois. And that's why the popular vote is moving to the right. But we don't elect people by the popular vote. So let's see. Jared the American says Texas v. White should be overturned. I don't know what case that is. Let me see. That is some case, some Reconstruction battle. I have no idea how that would have any modern day implications. Sam Madsen says, why does North Carolina like Democrat governors so much? Well, they just do. It's tradition. I can't control tradition. Now, lieutenant governor's a little bit different. Dan Forrest was elected in 2016. Mark Robinson was elected in 2020, but Dan Forrest lost by 4 points in 2020. So I think it depends on a lot of factors, honestly. But people like to split tickets. Those races are more local. There's more ancestral Democrats. Democrats typically run more, I guess you would say, moderate candidates. But I will say that so far, and we got a long way to go, but so far Stein is not running the best campaign. I mean, he's talking about how he wants Biden there with him. If he's going to be attached to the hip with Biden, he's not going to win. I don't care what Robinson said on Facebook 20 years ago. That's not going to be the main takeaway. Robinson's not Mastriano. He's likable. He has money. He already has served in statewide office before. So just looking at the big picture, him running for governor, I don't think it's like a lost cause at all. Some people think that it is, but some polls have him winning. Some polls have him down by a decent amount, but those same polls have, at this time in 2020, had Roy Cooper winning by 20 points plus. So it's going to be close, but will I say that Robinson is doomed? No. Will I say Trump is doomed? No. There are states that Trump is probably dead on arrival in. I don't think he's going to win Virginia. I think that it could get close. I don't think he's going to win it. He's not winning New York. He's not winning New Jersey. He's not winning Connecticut. Some people will talk about those states. I'll believe it when I see it. we get closer to the election, the polls show it being a few points differential, then maybe it's worth a look. But as of right now, I just can't exactly say that it's a top priority. Now, Trump placing ad buys in the New York metro area might be beneficial because some of that's in northeastern Pennsylvania, which is what Donald Trump needs in order to win the state. He needs to do better there, and there are down ballot effects in New York as well. But all in all, I think that that's mainly the job of the New York Republican Party to go chase voters for Trump and their down ballot people more so than it is for Trump to waste resources he could spend in, Pennsylvania and New York, because Pennsylvania matters more. And people that are saying, well, he said he's going to spend time in New York or whatever. Well, he's going to be spending a lot of time in New York over the next couple of weeks, sadly. But when it comes down to it all, it's like he said the same thing in 2016. He said the same thing in 2020. He's like, it was funny because he was like, I'm going to win Michigan and New York. And they were like, he's not going to win any of these states. It's funny because he won Michigan. I mean, Michigan was a state that nobody thought would go Republican, even though it was closer, just because, going all the way back to 1988, the last time it voted red was, I think, the last time New York voted red. So to kind of equate those two states didn't really seem like there was a big gap now. But it's like, yeah, Trump is probably going to, be favored in Michigan. But New York might be a different story, is just the way things are right now. Let's see. Mark Andrew Hamilton says Jay Valentine, who did eBay's fraud detection, says 500K illegals registered Wisconsin, double that in Michigan. What place? I don't believe there's that many in Michigan. And I say this as somebody who believes there's way too many. That's impossible that there's 1 million illegals in Michigan right now. That would mean 1 in every 10 person walking around is an illegal alien. It's bad. It's not that bad. It's I think the last estimate, even if we assume it's triple that, would be maybe 600,000 at most people, let alone registrations. There's virtually no way that's possible. You can go look at how many voters on the Secretary of State that have registered. There's virtually no way that that's even remotely possible to have that many registrations. I feel like a lot of this is demoralization. It's demoralization stuff that comes from people who profit off of it and prey on people because they want the clicks. And that's all it comes down to. Are there concerns with it? There are a lot of concerns with it, absolutely. But at the same time, do I believe that it's going to have a massive impact? Probably not as much as other potential things, because they wouldn't be acting this desperate if they were in the driver's seat. They wouldn't be acting this just insane in terms of the Biden campaign if they were in a good position to win. I see how their campaign behaves. They are basically saying that, well, Blumph changed the Arizona court ruling in the abortion case. That means he's going to bring back slavery next. It's like, these people are dumb. Nobody's buying their messaging. If this is what they're running with, there's no way they're going to win, and there's no way you're winning if you run with this messaging. Because in 2020, you could say Biden touched on healthcare. He touched on the issue of Trump's COVID response. He pandered to BLM. He got ridiculous black turnout. You name it. That's one thing. But at the end of the day, it's insanely ridiculous. The fact that these people are coming out here and they're saying, well, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, when in reality there's really no evidence of it when you look in the facts. Otherwise, the mainstream conservative media would be all over it. In many cases, they're not, because when you look into it, it's wrong. I mean, I was worried when I saw the first report out of Texas on that website, but then when I saw what the Secretary of State said that clarified it, it's like, okay, well, now that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. But yeah, we need to vote. That's it. We need to vote. I don't want to hear about, like, oh, what if this happens? What if this happens? Like, we could speculate certain stuff. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is we need to be talking about how we build up the operation to go out there and beat Joe Biden. That's all this really has to deal with, because I've never seen this country in the state that it's in. And I've seen the Great Recession. And it was obviously the economy, many metrics back then you could say was bad. But hey, at least the cost of living was low. At least wages would probably in the long term be better off in a recovery compared to now, because now you have a oversaturated labor market with all these illegals pouring in, and wages are stagnating. They're not growing faster than inflation in the past month, and it's going to get a whole lot worse in regards to oil, gas prices. You see what's going on overseas. In Iran, it's going to be a big, big mess. Dova Budgie 100 says, when is the Creepy Joe v. Trump debate happening? First debates are usually in September. Biden is not going to likely try to agree to a debate before then. I think there should be a debate every month, to be honest. I think that's something that really would be awesome for Trump, because he can easily go out there and beat Biden in a debate. I'm not saying that we need to underestimate Biden. I think, if anything, you need to overestimate it. But at the end of the day, that second debate between him and Trump just went out there and utterly decimated him, partially because, unlike the first debate, he let Biden trip up over himself and made him look like a fool. And even like the CNN polls that were purposefully showing Donald Trump in a weaker spot than he really was, they even showed it being like a dead heat. So the problem is not a lot of people watch the second debate compared to the first debate, and people vote after the first debate. Now, the good news for Trump is he knows the strategic way to beat Biden in a debate now, for one. Two, he's kind of maintained a tone that's a little bit more calm in a good way, but still maintains his wit, which makes him, have this base appeal. And when it comes down to the whole first president or incumbent president in the first debate thing, they usually fail. They usually don't do well. Romney, who was a robot, eviscerated Obama, who a lot of people viewed as a good public speaker. He eviscerated him. It was not even close. He embarrassed Obama in the first debate. But second and third debate, he lost a lot of ground. He was lazy. He lost the election. These are the same people that are the never-Trumpers. Those were the people running the Romney campaign, by and large, which is funny. Same thing with McCain, for the most part. And that was different, though. But Kerry, a lot of people said Kerry won the first debate back in 2004. That's the way it is. Carter W. says, recapping your thoughts on Biden's polling bump. Well, Biden's not gaining in his approval rating. Trump is not falling in the in the favorable rating. So a lot of it is pollsters just adjusting their methodology. What happened today is you saw a poll out of CBS YouGov. The problem that I had with the poll was that Biden's numbers tanked. They went down in every issue, but they didn't poll Trump v. Biden, because they know their last poll was Trump by 4. That'd be a Trump plus 6 poll, probably entering the aggregate. That is not something they want. And as a result, it's kind of skewing the aggregate a little bit. But, certain pollsters like Quinnipiac, they're actually moving to the right. Economists move to the right a little bit. I think it's overstated, but I think that Biden has gained 1% to 2% of the electorate that happen to be Democrats who now realize that they're not replacing him. He's going to be the nominee. Just like Trump saw a big bump in January after Iowa, because we know that at that point it's like, yeah, he's going to be the nominee. More Republicans came on board. I don't think Trump has done anything in the past month or so that would have lost him any support. I don't think Biden has really done anything in the past month that would really gain him any support. And if people want to say anything about that, they're more than welcome to say in chat what Biden did in the past month to get support. But that's the way it is. So let's see. We'll look in regular chat for about 10 minutes or so, and then we're going to end the stream probably a little bit after that. But it will be the last call for super chats. If you guys want to send in any super chats, feel free to do so. Let's see. RCP didn't add the Trump plus 6 and plus 4. Well, those polls were never a part of the RCP aggregate. There are some polls that 538 counts that RCP doesn't, and that's usually been the way that it is. So let's see. Yeah, Trump is at Biden is at 40.6% approval. That is not good for Biden by any stretch of the term. His numbers, actually, technically, he got a 2% net bump, but he went from 40 to 40.6, and he went from 56.5 to 55.5 on the approval front. This is a problem because Obama, the last president to officially win re-election, was at 47.3, and he's at 40.6. Bush was at 48.9. Trump was at 45.5. Biden is 5 points in a worse position than Trump was at this point back in 2020. And that is not a position that Biden needs to be in to win. And when you look at his approval rating on the economy, he's below 40%. So that's not going to be, the economy getting better is not enough to be a winning issue, because independents believe it's getting worse in every single poll where you look into the crosstabs. Foreign policy, that's going to get worse. I mean, 36.5%, that's becoming as much of an issue for him as immigration is, despite it being less of an issue people care about. But you look at immigration, yeah, he's down by 31 points on the issue. And that's not a position he needs to be in. He's supporting open borders is what he's doing. And that needs to be the message from Trump, and it kind of has been the message from Trump. But you look into the Economist YouGov poll. Let's see if we could do this. Does it poll Biden on abortion? I don't believe it does. Job approval on the issue of abortion. Yeah, it's not approved because, no. Okay. But when that's polled, Biden doesn't even do well on his approval rating for abortion. So how can you energize voters when they are upset with how you've handled the issue? Because the pro-life side, they believe that you are somebody who is evil and you're going to codify Roe v. Wade into law. Technically, he won't have the votes to do it, but he'll try. The pro-abortion people, they see him as somebody who could have done it, didn't do it. And a lot of people just in the general public, this ruling happened under Biden. That doesn't mean that he's not going to energize people to vote for him over Trump on the issue, because Trump did appoint justices that overturned the issue and kicked it back to the states. But to say that you're going to win based off of issues that happen under you, it's not really ever a good look. It's not like the BLM riots helped Trump's approval rating. It's not like, COVID helped Trump's approval rating on the economy, even though he won voters that cared about the economy, just like Biden's going to win voters that care about abortion, but they're going to be less inclined to turn out because it's like Trump has neutralized the issue. He's neutralized the issue. So let's see. I'm not doing enlightened centrism on abortion. There's no enlightened centrism. It's called political analysis is what it really is. Enlightened centrism would be like, well, actually, I think that a third trimester should be banned and nothing else. No, it should be banned. There's no debating that, but you have to be pragmatic. If me being pragmatic means that I don't have balls, well, I guess having balls and losing elections is just going to lead our country down the drain. I have a lot of balls, quite frankly, but that's not exactly the point. When it comes down to it, you have to be smart. Balls, you need balls. Trump's got a lot of balls. He's got more balls than anybody in politics. But you know what? He has brain. You need to have a brain as well. So be smart, be passionate, be smart. But these reforms are going to have to be done incrementally. The left is taking total control because they do things incrementally. It may not seem like they do, but by the time they're able to drop the big reveal, it's too little too late to do anything about it. So be careful. But that's the way it is. Let's see. We have another super chat here. Timbo Slice says, hey, Rep, did you hear about the guy in the Trump RV? It was beaten with a sledgehammer. He's from my home state of New Jersey. Prayers up, hoping he recovers. Well, I did not hear about that, but that's tragic. We'll keep him in our prayers. Dova Budgie 100 says, perhaps if I ask Trump real nice, he'll buy me a 1970 Challenger RT 426 Hemi with the 4-speed manual equipped with pistol grip shifter. That would be cool. Well, I don't know if he'd be able to do that. I don't know even if you're able to talk to him, that'd be a question for him. I guess it would be. I don't know if he'd be able to. but we'll see. Let's see. Can Trump get Arizona? Yeah, we'll wait and see the next round of polling and what goes on, not just in Arizona, but nationally. How did this abortion thing move the needle? How did the Iran strike potentially move the needle as well? I don't know how that's going to impact things, but I think that might be a lagging indicator if it impacts things like gas prices, because when we shut off Russia, we shut off America because now we're not, expanding our drilling. Now Biden is going and he is trying to essentially buy oil from Iran. Now you're not going to see him do that. Now it's going to be a mess. There's going to be more sanctions on oil. He can't use the emergency reserves because he's drained them. And even if he tries to just keep the gas prices where they are, that's not something that's going to be good enough anyways. He had to shut down the reserves. He had to open them before the midterms to possibly save save the Senate, save the House. It didn't save the House, but Thomas Willingham says, Johnson had me fooled. Guess I'm the dumb one. He's too nice is his problem. Now, with Trump in there, it probably, things could be different, maybe, because he does listen to Trump. Trump told him to do certain things that he's done. The FISA thing was a mess, I will say. But hopefully with Trump in there, he'll be better. And if we get a big enough majority, then maybe we could look for another speaker. Because keep in mind, Johnson is the best speaker that we could come up with, that we could have. We tried with Jordan, who it seems like he's voted with Johnson on some things as well. So who knows if he would have really been much better, because when you're in that position, it is a very swampy role. Johnson has a very good voting record up to this point, which is why there might be at least one glimmer of hope that things could change under a Trump tenure. But while I do think vacating him in the here and now is just dumb chaos, and we might even get a worse speaker, it's like if we expand the majority, is it worth looking at somebody who could possibly be a replacement? Yes, it is. It absolutely is. But the fact that we got rid of McCarthy is a good thing, because at least now you have precedence for, we could just change the speaker on a whim. Whereas if McCarthy stayed the entire remainder of Biden's term, he was going to be the speaker under Trump. He was. And now it's a little bit different, because now you can move things around, possibly if we have to, or maybe he'll get Johnson to come to the table more. Who knows? Milky Way Gaming says, I'm voting abortion amendment, but also Trump and Lake. So what does that entail? Are you voting to amend? Are you voting? Is it a pro-abortion measure that's going to be on the ballot in Arizona, or is it anti? Because that's a vague. I'll look in regular chat. You don't have to send another super chat if you don't want to, but kind of curious what you mean by you're voting for the amendment. Is the amendment to, I guess you would say, enshrine abortion in the Constitution? Or okay. Well, I disagree. I don't think that that's the right decision. I don't think it's the right decision. We talk about the fact that, yes, a ban right now is going to have negative implications, not going to be enforced. Right now, what the court did was all optics, and it was not good optics for a lot of people in the state of Arizona. Now, Trump came out and said it went too far. Lake came out and said it went too far, even though it seems like Lake kind of may have said a few things in her video about it that were, I guess you would say, she could have worded things better, because it did make her, she was like, oh, well, women have a right to choose. I'm going to give them more choices. That's a liberal talking point, and it's going to alienate people. What she said about the hungry stuff is 100% true, needs to be done. She can say, I don't support a national ban. It's up to the states. Even if she said it went too far with the exceptions thing, they have to say that. They kind of have to say it. That's one thing. And then she could say, you prefer the old law. She didn't have to say, well, I support their choices. Like that, I understand, I guess you would say, why she would do that. Do I think that it was necessarily something that made a lot of people on the right happy? No, we'll see how it impacts things, though. We'll see how it impacts things. But her proposal on the lowering of the abortion rate is important, because it's not just the fact that, if you're supporting a no ban on the federal level, that you can't do anything about the issue. You can do things about the issue. If you want to save babies, save the children, you're going to have to, I guess you would say, implement policies that would disincentivize abortion, lower the abortion rate. And when you do that, certain states are going to be more inclined to support bans because abortion is going to be more unpopular. The pro-life movement can continuously post wins if they're tactful, and they were tactful. They said we're going to overturn Roe v. Wade. They got that done. Now they're mad at Trump because he never changed his position. I mean, Trump has been very consistent on abortion his entire political career. I mean, the only exception was in an interview in 2000. He said, I don't like abortion, but, I think it's a personal freedom thing, which was not the right take. But even then, he was kind of like on the fence, kind of a centrist on it. Now he's like, certain bans may be too restrictive. I'm going to leave it up to the states. That was always his position back in 2016, back in 2020. But now, because it's popular to trash Trump on social media, apparently it's a little bit too pro-choice for me this time, or pro-abortion for me this time. Trump is not pro-choice. He's not pro-abortion. He is pro-life, and he does, I guess you would say, he's not as pro-life as he possibly could be, but he's definitely on the side of life, at least in terms of moving the ball down the field where it needs to be. That's what it comes down to. There is nuance. You can call it enlightened centrism, but it's just strategy. When we tried the other thing, it didn't work out in some places. We tried that in the midterms. Pennsylvania, disaster. Supreme Court thing, disaster. It's a third rail. You don't want to touch the third rail. You got the balls to touch a third rail? Well, you're just going to be electrocuted. Oh, but at least you had balls, right? Like, you have both. There's some issues where we can go very much so hardcore on, like immigration, and pick up support, pick up voters. Like, it's not a third rail. There's very few people that care. Oh, well, immigration, we need more immigration, or we need to keep our current level of immigration. Like, even if an immigration moratorium wouldn't poll well on its own, because it's a new idea, if Trump did it, I don't think people would care, especially now. Trump says we have too many people here. We're not taking in any more legal immigrants past like 200,000. We'll have no net migration during the tenure, no naturalizations, no nothing. Under Trump, maybe he would make some like temporary visa exception or something like that. Well, at that point, it would be an entirely different ball game, because then people would probably come around to it. If we enacted an immigration moratorium, that pulled above water in 2002. Bush, he could have saved a lot of problems from happening. I'll tell you that much. And he didn't. He was a coward, gave some amnesties, supported some amnesties. He spent all of the nationalistic energy on foreign wars for other interests and a national security state that terrorizes Americans to this very day. So that's the problem. 9/11 didn't have to give us what we got in the Bush administration. He severely dropped the ball on those two things, as he could have actually revived the American dream. He could have been a very good president. Instead, he just succumbed to, we're going to essentially restrict and toss out the Fourth Amendment in many ways and get involved in these foreign conflicts that are not for the interest of the American people, that are just due to lies that have been told by the special interests. So there's that. Let's see. LinRx52 says pro-lifers need to tweak their thought process to persuasion rather than force. We are making, if you push too hard, too fast, you can create resistance. Let's win a trifecta. Yeah, it's about optics. It's about getting things done. If you say, no, the 12-year-old on the operating table, no, she has to give birth or whatever, is that good optics? It's horrible optics, and it's something that a lot of people view as immoral, even if they tend to view abortion in most cases as immoral. So that's why Democrats are trying to capitalize on it. In many cases, they're lying about certain cases happening. They're making it seem worse of an issue than it really is. And I don't think it's going to stick as well as they think. It's not going to stick as well as it did in some places in 2022, because Trump is not seen as a radical extremist or whatever, but you have to be smart. You have to get things done. If Donald Trump gets a third trimester abortion ban on his desk, I guarantee you he's going to sign it. I guarantee you. And his justification will be like, I oppose late-term abortion. This is murder. And that would be something that's a net positive. It's moving the ball down the field even at the national level. Maybe you get a viability ban passed next, and then you go from there. But, that's pretty much all you can really do. I think a national ban at viability is something we could probably see under a Trump term. And then from there, state legislation will be different because the left will say, well, late-term abortions are a myth. Okay, well, then ban them with exceptions then. Ban them, life of the mother exception, that is. Why not ban them? I mean, they're rare. The data shows that they're a small percentage of all abortions, but there's few thousand elective performances every year, plus that, and it's horrific. That is not, you can't even make the justification. The baby can't feel pain, this, that, and the other thing. That is murder. That is an entity that can feel pain. The baby's in the stomach. The baby's kicking around. The baby can hear sounds. That's just insane to say that. It's basically you're killing a live being who's still in the process of, I guess, the human version of hatching an egg. The egg is pretty much, the chicken is moving around there in the egg, and you're just taking that away. That's a big, big problem. So, and the word ban itself is a big problem too, because if you don't say we're going to ban abortion, we're going to have common sense restrictions on abortion in the second and third trimester where the baby can feel pain and with a life of the mother exception. If you tell somebody that, I mean, that's probably going to poll at 65% that they would agree. But if you even say 24-week ban, which would ban it in the third trimester, past the point of viability, it's 50-50. The pro-life movement, a lot of them, they just want to, there's a lot of virtue signaling. It's not everybody, but the leaders, just like leaders of BLM, not comparing the two causes, but you have a lot of people that are in an industry where they have to create issues and they take things too far because they get clicks from it, and it blows up in the faces of Democrats in that case electorally. Defund the police, that's not something that's popular. I'm going to ban abortion. It's not really popular because ban is a dirty word in a lot of people's eyes. It's restrict, common sense restriction. Liberal Western Europe, they have an abortion ban at 12 weeks in most countries, which if you did a national referendum here, it probably would get, with the current messaging, it probably would get 35, 40% of it wouldn't even get 40% of the vote. It'd probably get in the low 30s. So this is a problem. I feel like there are a lot of people who identify as pro-life, but at the same time, they don't exactly fully believe that 6 weeks is a fair cutoff for some reason. Maybe they're not, you could say they're not fully pro-life, but you have to change public opinion. Public opinion has changed compared to the 90s on abortion quite a bit because of science, a lot of which I presume is still being suppressed because it's not convenient to the narrative, but still, we have a long way to go. If you want to see this taken care of and abolished and in our lifetimes, you're going to have to play your cards right. If you really want to see this just not exactly happen, well, then on the other hand, you can say whatever you want, lose big, and then I don't know what you would do from there, but you got to win. You don't want to touch a third rail. It's not going to help you get to your destination. And that is true. Same thing goes with Social Security. Don't touch Social Security. At this point, Obamacare has become a part of that, partially because Republicans have no health care plan. They dropped the ball. Paul Ryan dropped the ball. And John McCain also dropped the ball because I guarantee you if they went through with that repeal, the skinny repeal or whatever, it probably would have not turned out to be as bad as the fearmongers said it would, given what I've read a part of that bill and what it said. So there's that. Let's see. Thomas Willingham says, who will be the new Senate leader? The new Senate leader, it's probably going to be interesting. It might be Steve Daines. It's going to be somebody better than McConnell, hopefully it's not John Thune, and hopefully it's not John Cornyn. John Barrasso, like somebody realistic. Like, would I like a Senate Majority Leader, Josh Hawley, J.D. Vance? Yes, but I don't think they would ever have the votes for it. So we kind of just got to pick the best person that we can get. And I think that person will really just have to determine based off of who wants to throw their hat in the ring. And I'm calling on people like J.D. Vance, Josh Hawley, maybe Rand Paul and other people that are kind of good on certain things, maybe Carrie Lake if she gets in there, to hold the line and make sure that they get, just like they did with McCarthy, to make sure that they get somebody in there that's the best person they can actually get in that position. So there's that. It is going to be a compromise pick. It will absolutely be, but that's the lay of the land. It's going to take a while to fully overcome. The good news is with Trump in the White House, Trump is going to have, you want someone he has a good relationship with that's not going to be a backstabber, so Trump can pass his agenda through the House, through the Senate, so he can get things done. So there's that. If it's Steve Daines, it's Steve Daines. Do I think Daines is perfect? No. Do I think that his friendship with Trump is a positive thing? Absolutely. And he's a much better chair of the NRSC than Rick Scott. Rick Scott was a disaster. All these primaries, the money wasted. Now it's different. They've changed the ball game regarding the primaries in a lot of these open seats. I can't name one single competitive primary. We saw maybe Ohio, but that was an early one. It's not going to have massive ramifications. And Moreno still won over half the vote in a three-way race. And I don't think he's going to have any trouble consolidating support. And you look at Arizona, even then Carrie Lake is probably going to get close to 70% of the primary vote. Mark Lamb might drop out, for one. For two, he's ran a non-existent campaign. And for three, it's like that's a big problem because he could have actually, I'm not saying that it would change my support, but if he wanted to be smart and tactful, he would have wedged the abortion thing. He has said nothing. He has tweeted nothing. He has stayed in the race for apparently no reason, and maybe he will get out. I mean, he was friendly with Lake, so I can't exactly say that he's anticipating to win. He's not really hitting her where it hurts. I don't know why he's even in the race, to be honest, at this point. But yeah, there's no competitive Senate primaries, which is good. So without further ado, it's been a very long stream. It's been almost 2 hours. We have approximately 6.5 months before Election Day. So we got a long way to go, but at the same time, it's closer than ever before. A little bit over 200 days until we do our live stream on November 5th. And hopefully that night we will have called a winner, and hopefully it will be none other than Donald J. Trump. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this live stream. Make sure you guys like the stream down below. Make sure you guys hit the bell. Make sure that you follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below. I really only use Twitter and Instagram out of the ones that are listed. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle, out.